We will call the regular school board meeting for the Stevens Point Area Public School District for Monday, June 10, 2019 to order. And I would ask Heidi to do the roll call and verification of quorum.
Ms. Baker?
Here.
Ms. Daly?
Here.
Mr. Ebel?
Here.
Ms. Fang?
Here.
Ms. Portson?
Here.
Ms. Reno is excused. Ms. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Wade?
Present.
Ms. Erler?
Here.
We have 8 for a quorum.
Thank you. Item 3, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will move into item 5, public comments. No one has signed up. Is there anyone here this evening that would like to provide comments to the board with respect to agenda items? I do want to note, we'll be noting over the course of the next number of meetings that as part of the huge policy revision, that is one policy that was amended by the board to have public comments be restricted to items on the agenda. The main purpose for the board, the policy committee and the board in discussing it is that where there is an item that is on the agenda, the board then has the ability to actually take into account those comments and have that as part of that fuller discussion within the agenda. If there's an item that's not on the agenda and there's public comment, the board is not legally able to address that in any way other than minor response as to directing someone to the appropriate person to speak with, because otherwise it's a violation of open meetings law in the state of Wisconsin. If there are people present at meetings that want to provide public comment and they're not aware of this policy and it happens to be on an item that is not on the agenda, we will be reaching out to them individually and providing them with information as to who best to approach. Likely it will be starting with the superintendent so that he can determine how best to handle those concerns or questions. So again, is there anyone here this evening that would like to provide public comment? No one is indicating. So we will move into item 6, which is presentations. And our first presentation is Sarah O'Donnell, our communication report.
Hi, happy June, thank you. I will draw attention to the communication dashboard that was included in your packet. We saw some good exposure over the month of May, as we traditionally do, specifically with graduations and all of the exciting things that's happening in our schools for the end of the year. We saw a reach of over 310,000, which is a nice number for May. The second thing I'll bring your it's end of the year, right? So I had a super excited 5th grader today. Last day of school for her. We'll see last day for secondary tomorrow after a very, very long June. We'll move into summer communication and planning here. We'll slow down a little bit on our social media and communications internally as well, since we have a much lighter staff that's here for the summer. We will continue with summer school coverage and communication, and then in August we'll begin to rev up that back to school communication. At your places is an 18-19 annual communications report. This is something that I traditionally put together for myself and thought that this would be good information for the board to have as well. So just highlight some of the projects that the communications office did over the course of the year, some good outcomes that we had. And then we'll use a lot of that information to inform how we're planning for the upcoming year. And then obviously I'll come back and give you a nice update of what we'll be doing for 19-20. And with that, I'll take questions.
Any comments or questions of Sarah?
Yeah, thanks.
Very nice.
I guess I just want to note again the incredible thanks that I think we all feel to the support your office provided with respect to the referendum.
I feel very much better this year at this time than I did last.
But your department was a huge part of getting information out to the community, and it was on top of your regular job, and it was you're a one-person committee. So anyway, thank you. And we will move into the superintendent's report. Craig Garlett.
Well, thank you. Last month, we celebrated recognition for retirees. We had 18 people retire from our school district. We recognized 10 at the Sky Club. Many of you were there. And I think we'll agree that it was a very enjoyable evening. Special thanks to the SPASH String Quartet, including Tom Doan, William Hahn, Lily Rollins, and Austin Barch. We finished up with graduations over the last couple of weeks. We had 36 students graduate from Charles Fernandez, 5 students from Project Search, and 486 students from SPASH. So as we wrap up another year, starting today for elementary students and tomorrow for secondary, we're still in school yet through tomorrow. I'd like to thank all the volunteers and all the people that just spend so much time giving to our buildings and helping out with our staff from one year to the next. I think it's important that we step back and recognize the many people. I know our buildings certainly have individual recognition for those folks, but it's important to note that we have a lot of people that are not staff that pitch in each and every year as it relates to educating kids. I'd like to point out that we had our 50th anniversary for the Jean LaRose track meet, and we had well over 1,000 kids participate. And the weather was okay. First day was beautiful, and the second day we made it through. Summer school will be beginning with 2,600 students that have signed up for enrichment and remedial classes. Registration is now complete. And again, tomorrow's the last day of school. And our snow days behind us.
Last day of school, but it's also recognizing staff will have to be for a little bit more, so we wish them the best.
Staff will be here through Wednesday.
Right. And then their summer starts.
Yep, and then our summer starts. A lot of work to do yet this summer.
Any comments or questions of Craig? Again, just based on the summer school numbers, I just want to again reach out and thank those who are coordinating the program, as well as all the teachers who have stepped up to expand and increase the offerings and the opportunities for kids. It's great that they have places to learn during the summer. They have places to get good meals, breakfast and lunch, and they can better hit the ground running in the fall. So, moving on to item 7, our consent agenda includes the minutes of the May 13, 2019 school board meeting, approval of the schedule of monthly bills, and employment recommendations.
I would move to approve.
Second. Any discussion or questions about that? I will note that, that in the past, we have had, in the packet that we've received, we've had employment recommendations. We are trying out this new system. Every month when we do that, we come to the board meeting, especially at this time of year, and we have a number of additions to that. And so we are going to be looking to provide that to board members. Administration is suggesting that we provide that full and complete and correct list to board members at the night of the board meeting, so we all have a clear understanding of who we're approving and what we're doing. So we'll try that out, and we'll be able to talk a little bit about it at the board retreat, if get comments from board members as to how they feel about that.
Is there an addition to what's on the computer?
It was added in, this, so that's your current.
Your
what you're
computer
saying
is now
correct.
current.
Okay.
Yes, yes, the computer's now current, and that's what you received. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor with aye, and all those opposed, and I will have Heidi call the roll due to the bills.
Okay, Ms. Fang?
Yes.
Ms. Daly?
Yep.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Portson?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds excused. Mr. Ebel?
Yes.
Mr. Wade?
Yes.
Ms. Erler?
Yes,
Motion passes.
and we will move into business services, and I will hand the agenda over to Amy Daly, the committee chair.
Sweet. So first off, thanks to Mike. I was late and he chaired the meeting. The bus was late coming back from Cave of the Mounds. But we were moving right in then, so we have bid award for Pulver Whiting for plumbing. And so the recommendation to the board is that we're going to approve Wisconsin Mechanical Solutions. They were the low bidder. And so with that, I move to approve Wisconsin Mechanical Solutions for plumbing work at Plover Whiting Elementary for the bid price of $349,990.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next up is our 10-year capital improvement plan. Most of us have seen this before. It comes around every year or so, and it's just a look forward as to what the district would expect to spend on projects in the next 10 years. This is ever-changing. New items are added. Items get moved forward. It's moved through on as needed. So if it's urgent, like a roof suddenly starts to be a bigger problem than it would be in 2022, it gets moved forward. And so this is just to approve it as presented. So move to approve the revised 10-year capital improvement plan as presented.
Second.
Any discussion or questions about the capital improvement plan? Just want to note that there's clearly some variation in the earlier years of the plan because it's recognizing the facilities improvements that are going to be occurring because of the facilities referendum passage. So we're seeing those great project numbers there in those first years. I think Tom often indicates that once you get beyond that period of time, you know, you've got some sense of what it is you're looking at, but there's going to be definitely additions, subtractions, and changes to this the farther we go out. So, okay. So, all those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, approval of the preliminary 2019-2020 budget. Annual housekeeping thing, we are required to do this. And at this point, it is our best guess because we don't know what we're going to be getting and we don't know how many students we're going to have. And it's just a really blurry picture, but we do have to do this. So I move to approve the preliminary 2019-2020 budget as presented.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? As we know, this will keep coming back to
Coming
us.
back and
So
keep
we will
getting
be seeing
closer to the
this-
real number.
Yes. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into item 9, excuse me.
Oh, that's me too.
Human resources, so
All right,
you keep going.
Special Education Credit Reimbursement Program. We all are aware those are hard to fill positions, and in an attempt to train and retain and develop staff, HR has come forward with the recommendation of reimbursement for up to 12 credits for employees pursuing the licensure in special education. And so this is to approve that. So I would move to approve the credit reimbursement for up to 12 credits to employees pursuing licensure in special education per policy 5.04 of the employee handbook.
Second.
Any discussion or questions on this one? Note, and I don't know if we want to add this in to note, or I just want to recognize that employees receiving credit reimbursement will or must repay the district a percentage of the cost of the reimbursement if they leave the district within a 3-year period of first receiving that credit reimbursement benefit. So there is that, we are going to pay for that, but in the event you choose to leave within those first 3 years after we've supported that increased training, then there will be the requirement to repay a portion thereof.
If I could just make one comment. In the last year, in particular to our HR director, I've heard about 3 that I can think of different initiatives that she's started to retain staff, to move staff up, to attract staff. And this is good. This is really good, and I'm impressed with that. And I just want to say publicly thank you for all of those continuing efforts to work on that with our staff. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, next up is discussion of comparables, and consideration of amendments to the teacher and special education assistant compensation plans. Well, I do love to roll through the agenda. There's a presentation for this one, so Craig.
There is. This issue was discussed last week at the HR Business Services Committee meeting. And I'm going to continue this discussion this evening. I chose to put it during the report outs of committee meetings, as that's where the discussion originally started. Before we get moving here, I'd like to point out that our strategic plan has 4 pillars, and the top 2 pillars tie directly into what I'm trying to accomplish here with this issue. The first is fostering student engagement, growth, and learning. I think we'll all agree to be successful with that, we need to have an outstanding staff to accomplish that. And the other is developing and retaining quality staff. Part of retaining and recruiting quality staff ties directly into compensation. And what I'd like to talk to through this evening are the discrepancies that we have within our compensation, specifically as it relates to our teaching staff and our special education teaching assistants. And I'm going to spend some time here going through a presentation, then I'll open it up for conversation and discussion. In 16-17, we created salary schedules for all of our groups. That was my first year here, and that was the burning issue when I came into the school district. And of course, those that were here then and prior to will remember that it was very challenging. We implemented those salary schedules for all groups in 17-18. That was the placement year. Again, that was fairly challenging. There were a number of adjustments that were made. There were a number of appeals that were addressed. We continue to evaluate compensation today. I remember saying many, many times when we put together our compensation plan that it's imperative to have a plan before we can compare where we are. We knew, I think we knew at the time that we were going to be behind, and you'll recall pre-referendum, we created a plan that we could implement. And at the time, we implemented it within our budget, knowing that we're going to have to continue to look at it. And again, post-Act 10, salary schedules changed dramatically. So putting 2 salary schedules side by side like we could do in the old days where we had lane and step advancement, it was very easy to do. This took quite a bit of analysis on Beth's part to come up with this information. Our committees have continued to meet as late as just a couple weeks ago, and that's where was a springboard actually to this conversation. The issue here is we are, I don't want to say beginning because we have been, but it's becoming more and more evident that we're losing staff, specifically teachers, to our neighboring school districts. We're losing some really good people, and a lot of it comes right down to compensation. And as I go through here, I think you're going to see that the difference is significant, much more significant than I anticipated. And it's not moving for some reason. So we did, go back one, I'm sorry. We did a market analysis, and the first thing you do is you got to decide, well, who you're going to use, what schools. Typically, you use your surrounding schools. Oftentimes, when you do any analysis, you tend to use your athletic conference or schools from that because generally your demographics are the same. For the purpose of this study, we used the schools that we believe we're competing with directly. They are our neighbors, to include Everest, Marshfield, Merrill, Mosinee, Wausau, and Rapids. Through these comparables, it was clearly identified that our teachers' salary schedule is way under our competitors. and that's a challenge in terms of retention right now. It also creates a challenge when we recruit and we hire, because we have to address the need in terms of having a successful hire to at times hire somebody at a higher salary than people in a similar situation, years of experience within the school district. That was an issue that was significant prior to the salary schedule. Generally, the transition to the new salary schedule eliminated most of that. However, we have hired some people in that situation because decisions need to get made. You want to hire the brightest and the best, or do we hire somebody that might be just okay, but they'll take the job for what we're paying? So there are discrepancies in our salary schedules. I know this is hard to see. You should all have a PowerPoint within your packet. You can see that information. I got to step a little closer here. This is the market from last year. It's the 18-19 salary schedule. That's the year that we used for the comparables. And I'm going to step all the way up to the top left. Our salary schedule started out at $40,380. You can see there are 14 people on that step. The average market rate is $40,225. Our starting salary is actually above the market. When I say the market, I'm talking about our comparables that I just talked about, the average. We're looking at the averages market. We could have a 2-day discussion on where we want to be. Do you want to be at top? Do you want to be below average where we're at? Do you want to be at average? I'm selecting average, as you'll see when we go through it. If we just get up to average, we're still going to be, it's a considerable financial commitment. So if we go above that, I think right now it'll be somewhat of a stretch. But we're at 0% off market because we're actually above market. But you can see as soon as we get to step 2, we're already 1% below the market. And you can see when we get down here to step 13, we're 19% below the market. We go to 20%, 21%. These people in these cells are 21% below the average of our school districts. And then you'll see with again, this is the bachelor's, it starts to trim down just a little bit. But we end up still at 19%. When you look at the master's side, you'll see the same thing. It has our current salary. There's 2 people on that step. The market is $44,000, and it's a 5% margin below the average. And you can see very similar. It increases, not as substantial as that 19, 20, 21%, but it does get up to 11, 12%. And then it starts to taper down again until we hit our final step, which we are actually above the market. So we have a very competitive starting wage, and we have a very competitive top wage. In the middle, we got a problem. This is another data point. Our market analysis reflect those people on the salary schedule. There are also people off salary schedules in several districts. So the numbers are a little bit different here because it's taking all staff. This came right off the DPI website. This is information for, well, it's got fiscal year 18, which probably is 17-18. This data is from 17-18. It's right off the DPI website. You can take a look at the same schools in terms of the average salary. The average salary of all of our comparables is $57,687. We're at $55,205. If we go up, that was just my hand just moving back here. If we go to market at 57,687, we'll be at average, and you can see Wausau's at 56,800, we'd be just above Wausau, behind Marshfield, Rapids, and Everest. But keep in mind, this is information 2 years old, and we're looking at going to market next year based on our analysis from this year, likely will be a year old by the time we implement it. So we don't know what next year's market is. However, we're going to be probably right around there tied with Wausau. We'll be right in the center of this chart. So here's a proposed salary schedule that I'm bringing forward tonight. It's also in your packet. It takes the lanes, the steps, the vast majority of them change. One doesn't change because we're already at market. This chart, without going through it, will mirror the percents that we have off. So, back a few slides, if you go to Bachelor 17, I'm just using this as an example. Go back, please, to, keep going back right there. Oops. If I take a look at, I'm just using this as an example. Right here, Bachelor 17 is 47,880. This chart, that's 21% off, goes up to 57,900. That's a $10,000 increase. That is substantial. That is substantial. I get that. That just takes that particular person to average. It doesn't take that person to the highest paid salary among our competitors. I know that's a substantial increase, but that's what we're looking at right now. There's increases that go from $4,000 to $10,000. From a percentage standpoint, that's 21%. I get that. I'll also say, for years, we've been paying that person 21% below market. For how many years? And how many years can we continue to ask that of people? So, the next schedule, Heidi, or the next slide, please. That's also in your packet. I know you can't read that up there. I can't read it from back here. We're also looking at special ed assistants. It's actually a little more broad than that. It's level 2. Right here's level 2. Special ed EAs. ESL assistants. So it's just a few more than special ed. We label it special ed assistant because that's by far the majority of the people that we're talking about. You can see they're below as well. Starting with step 5. They're competitive step 4. We changed those from 5 on up. The rest of our staff, with our market analysis using the same schools, were within market. Again, which is within average. So, how do you pay for this and how do you sustain it? We went to a referendum in November to address programming, technology, and buildings and grounds. $500,000 for buildings and grounds, $1 million for technology, and $2 million for programming. And programming included a lot of things during that conversation. One of those issues was retention and attraction of staff members, or staff. Tonight I'm specifically talking about teachers and the level 2 support staff within the special education assistants. And I want to separate what our financial issues are in the school district and what we went to the referendum for. I was shocked when I found out, when we got these results. Beth had these results verified after she put the documents together with those school districts, and they all concurred that all of their numbers add up. Quite frankly, I was surprised that we were this far off. I didn't for a minute believe we were going to have staff members 21% below the average. And again, that's the average. So in my mind, we got to do something about it. We got to do something fast. I don't think we can just continue to, I just can't continue to allow people to come in my office and hand in letters of resignation because they have an opportunity to go somewhere for a substantial amount of money. And these are good people that want to stay here. And quite frankly, because of my age, I can look at some of these people that are probably my kids' age. And I would say, you know what, I don't want to lose you. But if you're my kid, boy, I'm saying, how can you not take that job? 10 grand a year and you're going to work 20 more years, do the math. You know, that's a substantial amount of money over the course of time. I think financially people are going to have to make decisions. We've got people that are working with 8 years of experience and they're making $43,000, $44,000 a year. Something's going to give. However, it's going to cost money. To do that, we've got a $2 million for operations. You'll recall that you passed dental insurance for EAs, I think back in January. Does that make sense?
Open enrollment started in January.
Yeah, okay. And that was an increase of about $122,000, and that was coming out of that $2 million. If we move forward with this compensation adjustment, it's $1.7 million. It's about 1.34 salary and another, $300,000 with payroll roll-ups, FICA, Medicare, WRS. So I'm saying it's approximately, the numbers I think are in there. It's 1,678,000 or something of that nature. Now keep in mind when we talked about sustainability, this is supplemental pay which is not subject to, by state law, base wage negotiations. So unless there's a change to this, it becomes a part of a teacher's base wage, the teaching assistant base wage. But I'm just throwing that out for people to hear. So in the event this moves forward and we go to negotiations next year, there's no secret. This is supplemental pay, and by state law, you can't negotiate supplemental pay. So this gets pulled off for the purpose of negotiations. I see some noddings ahead. You understand what I'm saying. However, it'll be attached to the salaries this year. There will be WRS paid on that. And so in terms of sustainability, there's a fair argument that there's roughly $200,000 left of that money. Now, over time, you're going to see an increase probably in Social Security. I mean, which will be very minimum as it's the percent of the increase. So there's a fair argument this will be sustained until a new administration decides to change it, a new board decides to change it, or state law changes. So what I'm trying to do here is paint the picture that we're utilizing those dollars in terms of what we told the public we were going to do with them when we went to referendum. We're also going to use $1 million in technology, and we're also going to use $500,000, and that's each and every year. These dollars have already been levied. We won't be using these dollars this year. And that's key as I continue to go through this. Because the next situation I'm going to talk about is how we sit as a general budget. You approved a tentative budget just a few minutes ago, knowing that a lot of things are going to change. We're looking at an anticipated adjustment to the revenue limit. Meg, you and I talked last week whether or not that's base building. It is. I believe 175 of it is. This is the first revenue limit increase that we've seen, Tom, in 4 years? So that is very significant. We'll get that money, it builds our base. The following year, we'll get that increase as well. That's imperative to make our school finance work. When we didn't get base building a revenue limit 4 years ago when that started, you can't balance your budget. So we need for that to continue. We're going to get approximately $1.5 million in state revenue. Again, that was passed by the Joint Finance Committee. It still has to get passed through the entire, the final budget itself. We are projected to have a deficit of approximately $1 million. We need to address that. I believe we can address that. Right now, we typically underspend. $1 million is a lot of money. Keep in mind, however, it's 1% of our budget. We haven't closed our books yet for next year. I know we're going to be dollars ahead for a couple of reasons. Typically, we underspend budgets. I'm hoping that we underspend our budget again this year. We also levied $2 million for salaries. We only for attraction and retention of staff, for programming. The only thing we used was $122,000 this year. So we're going to have a substantial amount of money left that we aren't going to spend because it hasn't been earmarked. Now, you also note at the business finance meeting last week, Tom indicated that dollars that we have left, because we levied that in the middle of the year, in January, when the taxes came out, we might not spend all the technology dollars either. Part of it is because the programs or the projects that'll be utilized are tied in the referendum, and some of that just gets complicated. Tom would like to pull as many of those dollars as we can into Fund 47, Tom? 46, 47, whatever it takes. To pull into 46 so we can use, that was a joke because there's a significant difference between those two funds. We also can use some of those dollars if need be, because they were levied this year for the purposes that we're talking about, to get us through, I'm going to say, the next 2 years, so we can make some adjustments throughout our budget, because we do have to have a balanced budget. And I feel comfortable we can do that. First thing we're going to address is our health care. We have to. Our health care is going up $750,000. It's absurd. It's absurd. I'm confident we can maintain our service and get a better rate. We haven't gone out for bid for long enough. We've got to go out for bid, and we've got to reduce that number. I think we can reduce that by several hundreds of thousands of dollars. But that's just one example of issues that we're going to look at. Again, we don't know where the budget comes in at the end of this year. We're still waiting to see. We don't get our numbers for a budget until October. You've been through that before. We start the school year up in July. We don't pass a budget until October. It's crazy, but that's public school finance. I think the next slide is a discussion.
Well, for the purpose of discussion, I'd move to adopt the supplemental pay for the teacher and special education assistant compensation plan as presented.
Second.
Discussion. I have an initial question, and it's just like kind of an in-the-weeds question, so it's probably going to reflect my lack of understanding. But last year, we received an additional increase from the state as a low-spending school district. We went to referendum with the potential that if we didn't pass the operating, we would be potentially penalized by that. But we passed the referendum. So we will be seeing additional dollars from the state with respect to that as well, or no?
No.
And,
Because of the passing of the referendum, the $3.5 million,
yep,
our cost per child
went up.
is above the minimum.
Okay, okay,
The
So
expenditure per-
okay, all right, thank you.
Good question. I think I asked Tom the same question earlier. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question. Do you take benefits into consideration when you look at compensation?
Yes.
So how did you factor that in? to come up
No,
with-
excuse me, we're looking at salaries. When you say benefits in terms of insurances,
Yeah, how does our benefit package compare to the same districts?
well, it's very comparable. I can tell you that I'm getting off of ours and I'm gonna go on Wisconsin Rapids because it's a better insurance. Very, very comparable. We did also take a look at days worked, making sure that we're comparing the same amount of face-to-face contracts themselves. They're all very consistent.
And, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say quickly, when you, did all those other school districts have the same number of steps?
No.
Then how did you calculate that, or how did you compare on a
It's
equal
generally
basis?
based on years of experience, so if somebody ended at, 25, it's just that same rate, or let's say 15. it
Okay,
would
so
be that
you just
same
used a
rate.
year of, years as
Yeah,
a,
generally it's service.
okay, thank you.
We had a teacher, I had a teacher that I met with on Friday, had an offer in another school district. I looked at our comparable data and said, in this school district, our market adjustment would be, don't quote me, and not that it matters, but I think I said $50,000, $50,070 dollars. And that particular teacher said that's exactly what it is in this other school district as well. I ended up giving them $3,000 more, but that's beside the point. So it's another example of our market study that compared a similar situation with somebody not on that market that was dead on. So I'm confident in the work that Beth did, because there's a lot of numbers there.
Barb? I don't have a question, I just have a comment. On the special ed EA salary, I still think the beginning one is too low. I mean, I realize you went from step 5 on up, but I think to start under $15 for a special ed EA is crazy.
I can agree with that. We've had the conversation. That takes us to market. Tom had spreadsheets that go a little bit higher, and then we came full circle and said, we're asking the board consistently for the same thing, for market. If we go above for special ed aides, why aren't we going above for regular ed aides? Why aren't we going above for clerical? Our studies say that's market, though I understand what you're saying, Barb, but that was the conversation we said. Then I got to justify it to everybody else. Right now, I can look at everybody else and say, we're at market. I'm sorry, we're not going to increase because we're at market. If I do that, I'll be back shortly asking for more for everyone else, and how do I justify to everybody, all the other groups, that we went above market for one group? This is not the end of this. This is a continued conversation as it relates to salaries. Next year, if we do this, we likely will be a year behind already, because the other schools, we're comparing their salaries from this year, not next year. We're coming up to this year's market for next year. So there's an argument we're a year behind. I'd rather be a year behind than 10 years behind. So this conversation isn't going to go over, or isn't going to go away. You know, it depends on how the schools include supplemental pay through the negotiations, how that affects everything. We're going to have to go back and do another market analysis. My recommendation to Beth and Tom is in 3 years. We aren't doing it next year for 2 reasons. We're wearing down people. We don't have enough time to do this. And in the event we find out, we know we're going to be likely below. If we're going to pass $1.7 million tonight, we can't do that every year. Now, granted, we shouldn't be 21% behind. We should now be very, very close. And of course, we don't know what the other districts, I know one of the districts that we're talking about they're giving 0 for CPI. Everyone else is giving CPI. So the numbers next year will change. We don't know what they look like.
So the questions that I had, and when we were talking about this and some emails that we got, so I had basically 4 questions that you answered. And that is, and hearing from some of the staff, we're losing people, and we're losing people, really good people, and people to other districts. So that was, is that true? And you said, yes, we are. The second question was, so how are the differences, which you showed us, you know, with those other districts? How do we compare our pay plan? And you showed us that. And then the third one was, what will it cost to bring us up? You know, everyone wants to be above average, but maybe we can't do that right now. But what would it cost to bring us to average, to not lose people, to be competitive? And you showed us that. And then the fourth one was, how do we sustain that? What steps? And we all know the budgets, you know, you can't guarantee anything, but you have a plan for that. And I know that you and Tom and Beth worked on that. I am really, really comfortable, and I really think this is extremely, especially after the referendum. We're moving forward, and we've been moving forward, and I believe we really, really need to do this. So I would absolutely support it. The people here have been through a lot, and I think we should keep every single person that we want to have here. So I totally support it.
Jeff?
Did you, I think it was about 6 years ago, we did that, Carlson Detman, was that 6 years ago? And
It was longer.
5 years ago? Okay. Because they talked about the special ed EAs.
Yes,
And
they-
that was one that they really zeroed in, that was substantially under, not market, but they actually did an analysis of the job. They did it, you know, the breakdown. And I can't remember what the number was, but it was higher than what the average is or what market is right now. So have you seen that, or did you
Oh, yeah.
dig that out? Did you?
Yeah, that goes back to Florence.
Right.
Yes, we have that document.
It was before, oh, it was Florence.
No,
that's
Florence
right.
was here.
It was before Florence. Carlson Detman came out before Florence. Yeah, there was when, I think it might have been when Attila was maybe doing.
That's
both.
right, he was doing both, yes, yeah. And that was before Florence.
I would be willing to take a look at special ed aides again in another year. Is that okay, Beth, when I said that? That's not nearly as challenging as
Looks
the.
could kill.
That's not nearly as challenging as the teacher schedule, because of the interpretations. You almost have to go through people individually. But that's, the schedules they're just completely different. To compare the special ed, just the support staff in general is easier to compare than teaching schedules. Because the special, or the support staff schedules really haven't changed. They're really straightforward. Post-Act 10 as well.
Any other,
I have a question.
yeah, yes, Mike.
The proposed schedule, I guess what I don't fully understand is, if we approve to this, does it become the new schedule? And how do you differentiate the supplemental pay piece?
When Tom costs out our staffing, he's got a spreadsheet with staff, their name, their the step that they're on, their salary. It produces then a final number, and then we run our costing off that final number regarding whatever's agreed CPI would be, whatever's negotiated, and then you have your roll-ups that then get included in that. When you come up with your final number next year for staffing salaries, we'll deduct 1,600,000. That approximately 1.7 million gets deducted off that, because that's supplemental pay. And then whatever you negotiate for CPI, you apply that to that final number. So there's some record keeping. It's an accounting issue more than anything.
And is there, I guess there's an opportunity at some point to say that's not supplemental pay, that is just regular base
Not
pay?
unless the state statutes change. You can only negotiate total base wage.
Gotcha.
What we're talking about here is not negotiable. It's whether or not, it's the will of the board.
Yeah, okay.
But you can't add, you can pay teachers and organized labor groups, whatever you want to, with supplemental pay. You can only negotiate base wage. And base wage was determined back in 2011 when Act 10 hit. It was whatever somebody was making at the time. Actually, I'm not going to go back there because there was some craziness that went with that to explain it.
Good, I'm good.
Okay.
Last question. The previous schedule, as you look between each step, you know, there's consistency in the differences between the steps.
Yes.
And with the new schedule, you know, because we're trying to match averages from our neighbors, we've given up on that. Is that a concern
The
at all?
changes, those nice, neat $500 increments changed this last negotiations based on what we agreed on. It was 2.44% per person. And that changed the cells.
Yeah. But the new numbers with the supplemental won't have that same sort of consistency.
No,
I'm just
I wouldn't,
asking,
I
is it a
wouldn't mind, I would like to get back to that.
Yeah.
And of course, that's gonna take some time to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say that. Nope, back up. Our new cells are market. And we thought about that. Well, there's no rhyme or reason between these. Our analysis for average are these new numbers. So if we try to create consistencies
Yeah.
for the sake of a schedule,
Yeah.
we'll create inconsistencies with market values.
Yeah, good point.
We discussed, trust me, we discussed that one.
Ann?
I have a question. Are our bilingual EAs used as interpreters? Or do we have interpreters who
Some
do
are,
that piece?
some are.
And they're all getting the same stuff as other EAs when they have different responsibilities?
They get the same within that level 2.
Okay, so if we have two folks in the same step one is bilingual, and that person is utilized to interpret, but if another person is in that same step, they don't speak a second language, they're not used for interpreting?
Yes. We've had discussions whether or not we need more steps within special education assistance. We have 2. We just haven't agreed on adding a 3rd category, I guess.
Good question. I just wanted to make one comment. I applaud this, and I thank you, like I thanked Beth earlier. I think that you guys this year, I've seen just a lot of proactive initiatives to try to find more teachers, bring more teachers into the fold, to celebrate teachers and so forth. People that are doing really wonderful things for our district, and I appreciate that. I have a concern, though. In the meeting last week when Dr. Gerlich was presenting, he used a couple of words that I wrote down. He used the word crisis several times. And that was really alarming to me. And I have to say, as a school board member, I don't want to be dealing with alarming things. I want us to be working like a, well-oiled Swiss watch. And I don't, and judging by the crowd here tonight, I'm thinking these folks back here want to be teachers. They don't want to be in here lobbying for their wages. And I just want to make sure that we're thinking proactively next year and the years that follow, so we don't get to a point where our superintendent is using words like crisis to describe our staff and whether our staff is going to be here next year or not. And I guess that's the only thing, but I applaud this. I applaud this. I support this. I want to see this move forward. And I thank you for bringing this forward, because I know we've had several conversations about this. But I just want to make sure that we're being proactive so that these folks don't feel like they have to show up at another school board meeting come June of next year.
I think we do have a crisis. I met with, I believe, 6, maybe 7 staff members over the last 2 weeks. 6 left. 6 out of 7 left.
And I guess
And they're knocking at my door. And it's because of the substantial difference here. We're talking about a significant amount of money. I know it's a healthy raise, and it's one that's challenging to say, yeah, I can support that. But doggone it, we're underpaying people.
had we done this a month ago, would that have saved those 6 teachers from leaving our district?
Maybe. I don't think they all would have even applied. If we've had this salary schedule, I don't know. There's one that I think it was more of a family issue, but I don't know if the others would have even applied. I don't think they would have.
And that's my point, is that I don't want to get to a crisis. I want to be proactive and just would encourage you guys to continue being, thoughtful in your proactive initiatives dealing with our staff. I mean, as a state, we are running into a crisis as a state, trying to hire people and keep people in central Wisconsin, keep people in the upper half of the state. And we got to be ahead of the game. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work for anybody to keep coming back to a crisis. We've got to figure out a way to get ahead of that curve.
We just can't allow this to get this far down the hole again, is what it comes down to. And so it needs attention. We need to continue to analyze our salaries, all salaries, so we're competitive, so we don't get in this situation. But kid yourself not. It's about dollars too. You know, we've got the ability to do this because we went to a referendum, but we're gonna say no a lot next year. Hey, Craig, can we do this? No, we can't. We're tied. We're really tied down right now, and we are. I mean, I believe firmly this is something that we need to do. We also then have to address the bigger picture of our long-term financial issue as well.
I just want to note when we went to referendum. I mean, we went to referendum and we were at the bottom. And we did a lot of studying of this community as to what we believed the community would be willing to support in terms of both the recurring referendum and the facilities referendum. But we also made very clear to everyone that even if we passed that number, we were still going to be 6 out of 7. So when I see that number come up there, it doesn't surprise me. And I think we just need to step back and recognize that we have been creating, maybe not as quickly as anybody wanted, but for the last several years, we've been creating the building blocks so we had the financial ability to be able to even consider this tonight. So we cleaned up all the labor contracts. We created supplemental plans. We went to the community to ask them for additional dollars specifically because of this, because of our concern of what was happening in terms of our ability to recruit, retain, attract, develop our staff. And the community responded. And that's why we're here tonight. I mean, they gave us $2 million recurring moving forward to do this. But I want to just, because I want to make sure everyone knows in this room and out in the community, you know, if we're talking about 3 years from now going back in and looking at doing again that next market adjustment, I think we all need to be aware that unless state financing of school districts fundamentally changes in a way that none of us can envision that it will, we will be looking to the need to go to the community and again explain to them the importance of the need to provide additional financial support to our schools. And I think it's again, for me, it is the reality. I mean, the reality is we know we have this issue. The reality is that the superintendent and staff, I mean, Beth has spent the last, since the referendum passed, frankly, and Tom, since the referendum passed, pulling together these numbers because we finally had some dollars that we could actually put in to the system and try to create some solutions. And I totally agree with you, Trish. You know, we don't want to get it to where it was, but I think we have to be very clear and deliberate about making sure that we are taking the steps that we are going to need to take to continue to have the funding to be able to support this. And there we are at the will of our community. And, you know, I applaud everyone in this community that stepped up both to pass the referendums and to resoundingly support them. And I want to underline, that's why we're here tonight, and we have the ability to even consider the proposal that the superintendent has put in front of us.
Jeff?
Jeff?
So it's just, just to clarify again, we did plan on the expenditures through the referendum, the $2 million for these types of expenses, but we just didn't plan on spending it all the first year. Is that right? So it kind of moved up.
Yeah,
we just kind of
I did
compressed it.
not realize the magnitude of this. You'll recall last year the considerable conversation we had, as Meg discussed earlier, in terms of the amount we'd go to. I think we started at $1 million, and then we increased it to $2 million. And I remember saying, boy, we could increase it to $3 million. It was a threshold of, if we go too high, we aren't going to pass anything. And so we landed on $2 million. But to answer your question, I thought it would be half of that until we got our research in. I didn't expect to do this. And then, I'll be frank, I had conversations with Tom. I said, Tom, I want to fix this up to market over the course of 2 years. Because 1 year, how am I going to stand up here and ask for this? I mean, those are very significant increases. And Tom said, if our goal is to get to market, why are we waiting 2 years? How many more teachers are we going to lose? Let's just do it. Let's do it in 1 year. And that's what we're here to present or to request.
Well, and part of it too, I think, again, as we talked about the 2 million, recruitment, retention, development of staff, there clearly had also been over the last several years serious issues raised in this district about staffing support with respect to special ed, with respect to social work, with respect to psychologists, with respect to kind of all those support things. And at least I kind of had in my mind, we had 2 million, there was going to be dollars that would be in that pot to add staff as we needed, maybe to add some additional programming as we needed. I think what we're hearing from the superintendent tonight is that it's essential that we ensure that we have our staff being adequately paid. And then we, as a district, are going to have to go back to the drawing board and start being creative about what our existing budget is and how we can massage and work through things to help provide those other resources we know that we need to know, that we could sorely use in this district, but there's just less referendum dollars now that are going to be available to support those other options.
There was another point that was brought up last week at the committee meeting, and that was that we are spending a lot of our resources for professional development of our staff. We're training them for other school districts when they leave.
We are.
There's a.
We do a very good job onboarding new staff. We have a great mentorship program. Student services and ed services have done a great job putting together professional development. I'm very proud of what we do for staff in general, but specifically new staff. They're coming here, we're training them, they're going somewhere else, and we oftentimes are paying the person more that when we hire them, we've been better off doing what we're doing here and keeping these people, training our people and keeping our people. But there's truth to that. It costs a considerable amount of money to train staff. And if you take a look at those percentages, a lot of those high percentages were right in the middle Those are our staff that have been through these trainings. They are experienced now. That's the future of our veteran staff right there. We need those people. You know, years ago, nobody left school districts. You would go somewhere and spend 30 years there. That just doesn't happen today. People have options. People commute today like it's nothing. It's just a different day.
Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second on the floor. And I think this is something that I'd like to request a roll call vote. Heidi, if you could. And Amy, could you just repeat the motion? I think you made it.
Move to adopt supplemental pay for the teacher and special education assistant compensation plan as presented. And Trish was the second on that.
Thank you, Ms. Daly. Mr. Ebel?
Yes.
Ms. Daly?
Yes.
Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Fang?
Yes.
Ms. Portson?
Heck, yes.
Ms. Reno is excused. Mr. Scott? Ms. Scott?
Absolutely, yes.
Absolutely, yes. Mr. Wade?
Yes.
Ms. Erler?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Thank you.
Continuing with my human resources, ratification of the 2019-2020 AFSCME Local 309 collective bargaining agreement. We have come to point of ratification. So I would move to ratify the 2019-2020 collective bargaining agreements between the district and AFSCME as presented.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And last but not least, ratification of the 2019-2020 Teamsters General Union Local 662 collective bargaining agreement. I move to ratify the 2019-2020 collective bargaining agreement between the district and the Teamsters as presented.
Second.
Second by Trish. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We will move into educational services, and I'll turn it over to Barb Portson.
Okay, we had an extensive agenda last week. We heard about, from Darla and Corey, the elementary highlights. There's an awful lot of stuff going on in our elementary schools, and they had all kinds of great news for us. We also saw a demonstration of the telepresence robot. We have three of them. It was amazing, but a little creepy. But a great tool for our students who maybe don't flourish in the regular classroom. So it was, that was exciting. We also talked about the SPASH secondary schedules. That's our next item on the agenda. And is someone here to, oh, John is here.
Looking like summer started.
I wish.
We're
We're getting close.
tonight.
Good evening. As Barb mentioned, our daily schedule committee was at the Ed Services meeting with another update. This has been an ongoing project that, for those of us who've been involved with it, is now probably taking a lot longer than anyone anticipated or wanted. In front of you is a recommendation with a memo on the slides that we shared last week. Specifically, we're trying to solve some problems. Those problems include the fact that our current schedule has no built-in or consistent or systemic teacher collaboration time, that our students, because of the regimentation of an 8-period day, have limited access to teachers depending on when they're off. And then thirdly, as our curriculum has evolved, our programming has not. So as we walk down our road and have looked at different things we wanted to do, we took a turn from what we had been working on earlier this fall and have what's in front of you right now. We want to recommend that we adjust our Wednesday advisory day schedule to immediately, we feel, provide a bridge to a different type of schedule that we would implement in the 2021 school year with a couple specific outcomes. First of all, we want to improve student access to teachers for coursework, support, intervention, and enrichment. And then secondly, we want to give our teachers the opportunity to meet as part of their regularly scheduled school day. A sample of that advisory schedule is in your packet, and you can see there that we still have our advisory. However, we've built in that teacher collaboration time, and we've also built in what we call that personal learning time, where students would be able to seek out any teacher that they need, because that teacher's obligation during that small block of time would simply be there for students, So what we would like to do this year, as presented to the committee, is implement that updated Wednesday schedule while we continue to fine tune our recommendation for a hybrid block schedule for that following school year. And a draft of that hybrid block is also included in your packet. And it's important to note that at this time, that is simply a draft. That is not our final recommendation, but that is the concept that our schedule team, and there's a lot of important people who have been really diligent with helping with this. They're noted in there as well. That schedule team, that is the leadership provided at this time by that team for our school.
So the motion is to recommend that SPASH continue to move forward with its schedule project by revising the Wednesday advisory schedule and working to implement a hybrid block schedule for the 2021 school year.
Second.
Any discussion or questions?
Yes, thanks, John.
Just one question. Can you describe just a little bit for me the 7:35 to 8:20 time period? What goes on in that time period?
Correct. So it's not simply a late start for students. What it is, though, is that's where we would build in that teacher meeting time. So while teachers are meeting, students would have access to do whatever they need to catch up during that time. Down the road, that would be a time where we could look at building in some embedded digital resources for students, whether it's for social emotional learning, ACT method test prep. Right now, in this moment, we're going to start simple. We've kind of learned that through some of our mistakes that we've made along this journey, but that's what would happen during that time.
Thank you.
I just want to note, I really appreciate you get these two outcomes here. Because I think if you're methodically studying whether this is actually both improving student access to teachers for coursework support, intervention, and enrichment, and also measuring and studying that increased faculty collaboration and how that is helping to improve your day, I think it's going to be a lot easier than if we then are looking to expand that schedule in some way moving forward. I mean, if what we want to happen isn't happening, then of course that's when you got to step back and say, okay, well maybe we need to kind of take a relook at this. I individually have a little bit of concern about that first hour. I just want to ensure that we've got students coming to school, and I want them to be in the building, and I want them to be productive during that time. So I'm really hopeful that there'll be some really good thought given to how to ensure that that is consistent over the year, and if issues are arising, that they're addressed through the year. I know my kids, so that's all. I guess that's all I'm going to say. Anyway, Trish.
I just want to say you have been back so many times to talk about the schedule. And I appreciate that, because what I continually hear you saying is that we have come up with a new model. We're working it out. We're listening to our teachers who have suggested this and that. You listen to us, who we all said, you're just letting them out early is what it looks like to us. And I appreciate that you are so, what's the word I'm looking for, persistent in trying to accomplish this, because I think that the goal is going to be a really cool goal. I mean, I think that's going to really benefit our students as far as different types of learning and different types of classes and longer periods, shorter periods, and so on. So I appreciate you keep coming back, and please continue coming back. But I also appreciate listening to the staff and really taking those comments and working them in. and coming up with something that will be better and better. So it's been a good evolution to watch.
Thank you. Far from done, too, so.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion or questions? All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks, John.
And our last item was the junior high school advisory program, and I see Steve is here, and Dan is here, and Ryan.
And Laura Schultz.
Oh, my goodness. They're coming from all directions.
I have my 2-hour speech all lined up here for you, you know. I know you all want to get to The Bachelor and watch that tonight. That's fired up for that.
We got a timer on you.
You have a timer on me? Well, we'll make it very quick then. Basically, I'm here to do a quick introduction of advisory and what happened. It's probably the first true thing that ever happened between Ben Franklin and PJ Jacobs that we worked on for a long period of time to find something that really was beneficial for our students. And that kind of came out of this committee advisory. It's a period that's set up currently once or twice a month to teach lessons to students that will benefit them socially, emotionally, ACP, etc. Well, we developed this plan and it's worked out very well. Our students have been very receptive. Our students have been, and our teachers have also been very receptive to this change. And so we came to you with some proposed changes. Mr. Prokop.
So one thing that we realized this year is having 2 advisory periods of 20 minutes in length in a given month isn't giving us the time to address all of the things that we'd like to do and like to accomplish through advisory. So what we'd like to do is change that next year to every Wednesday, meeting for 30 minutes between first and second hour. And it's an adjustment to our courses for the day. We don't just adjust the morning hours, we adjust all of our class periods so that we're trimming a little bit from each one. We did that this year as well to make it fair and equitable to all the teachers in the building because there's a lot that they do and we got to be respectful of that. So that's the biggest change that we're looking to do. Ryan's got some more details about some of the things that we're going to add to our list of topics for advisory.
So what we're looking at overall when we're talking about advisories, it's really an investment into our school culture and our students' learning. So what it allows us to do is things that were usually addressed in different aspects of the classroom or in different classes. Academic career planning was added on here. In social studies, we would have to grab the planner and go through school rules. Other science would have to grab a section of something and take care of it there. That can all happen in advisory now. So teachers are not losing valuable instruction time. We're grabbing 3 minutes out of each class or 4 or 5 minutes now out of each class. So no one's losing a significant amount of class time to do this because, for example, in social studies, we'd lose 3 or 4 days. That's a big chunk of class time. The unique piece about this, so we can cover at a universal level, so every student is getting access to this digital citizenship, academic and career planning, social emotional learning to help try to work to level that playing field because our students are coming from such a wide variety of backgrounds and help and them develop the social emotional skills to be successful in school. PBIS initiatives to help steer and correct behavior and coach behavior. And again, this is all at a universal level. So what's gonna be unique for us as a building is we're gonna have every student getting some of these same lessons. So the language is gonna be common throughout the building. So that helps us have common universal expectations. And then it might be talked about, sure, one 20-minute, 30-minute, or one 30-minute lesson on a growth mindset might not accomplish that. But when it's restated and reminded in class after class after class, that really then begins to build and grab a hold in that student. So again, what we're looking at here is, well, it's 30 minutes every Wednesday, but it really is an investment overall in our students' education and bettering our school and our school culture. The other thing is 7, 8, and 9, we also do stagger the lessons. So a 7th grader is not going to get the exact same lessons as an 8th grader and a 9th grader, so it won't be repeated for them necessarily. And then the other unique thing about going to every Wednesday is it allows us to address building needs that are happening right now. So we can then have, if we're seeing something specific in 9th grade, they can address it. Something specific in 7th grade, we can address it. And that's really what makes this unique, and it allows, because the students have the same teacher, 7, 8, and 9, it really helps them build the connection and relationships with teachers and to school.
Good evening. I'm Laura Schultz, school counselor at PJ Jacobs. One of the things I'm most proud of with this initiative is that it grew out of our PBIS committee at PJ Jacobs in the 2016-17 school year. We got permission to pilot about 6 advisory lessons in the 17-18 school year, and we delivered those school-wide. And then from that, it grew into a joint effort between Ben Franklin and PJ Jacobs to have this foundational advisory committee that would meet on a monthly basis and get together in the summer to plan curriculum, to write lessons, to get feedback from students, from staff. We would like to get feedback from parents too in the future. So one of the things that Ryan mentioned that I think is going to have huge effects years down the road is the fact that your 7th grade student is going to be with the same advisor potentially for 3 years, provided we can keep our staff. And I think that the opportunity there for growth and for that resiliency piece when you have a trusted adult in the building is huge. So I really applaud the efforts that we've had so far, and I look forward to continuing it in the future and modeling our weekly advisory lessons somewhat similar to what we're seeing at SPASH. Thank you.
Then I would like to make the motion to approve the weekly junior high school advisory program.
Second.
All right, any discussion or questions?
I just think this was a great presentation. Really, really.
Second that too.
Ryan, you did a nice job there. Really good.
Yeah, Mike.
Logistically, how does this take place? Every Wednesday, 30 minutes, where are the students going for this advisory piece?
So all of our students are assigned a homeroom, so we've essentially replaced the word homeroom with advisory now. So when we used to have like locker cleanouts or you get your schedule of the very first day of class, you go to your homeroom advisor is now your advisory teacher. So we have lists, and we have, instead of doing it alphabetically, we've randomly gone through the alphabet just so we have a good mix of students in all of our advisories. But we have a master list of who is where, and then counselors and other people fill in if there are staff that are absent. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
About how many are in a homeroom these days?
Well, and one of the things that we looked at this year was having our instructional leaders be a part of the homeroom advisory setup, because in years past they had not been, which has enabled us to have smaller classroom numbers. So I would say about 20. We would like to maybe see it lower if we have enough staff who aren't traveling between buildings that we can help facilitate that.
So I want to make one more comment, kind of to add on to what Mike said. When I first got on the board, every year I'd say, it would be really great if these kids had a homeroom. So I didn't realize it's that close to that. I had that in high school, and it was great, that consistency every year. You did feel like you had somewhere where you could go and ask those questions. A lot of things that are announced are missed, I know, during the year. So I'm very, very happy about that. I think it's going to be a great thing for the kids.
I just think I really appreciate tonight the synergy between Spash's presentation and yours. I mean,
Yeah.
especially because we've got a 3-year high school and a 3-year junior high, and the fact that our 9th graders in particular are going to be so used to this system, and then being able to move up there is just, it's pretty neat the way this all kind of is coming together. So if there are no further questions or discussion, there's a motion on the floor. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will have, the next item is student services, and we have the CISA 5 contract. Caleb's here this evening.
Good evening. Tonight, I am proposing the preliminary contract for CISA 5 for our services that we contract. I'm happy to finally present this to the board. I know it's June, so again, it's preliminary because again, it can be adjusted based off the students that we kind of get, or ebbs and flows throughout the year, but I'm asking for approval of the preliminary contracts for the 19-20 school year through CISA 5.
I will move to approve the preliminary 19-20 district CISA 5 contract for services as presented.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? The only thing I want to note is a question came up at committee, what this was in terms of our cost. And Caleb, do you just want to speak to that change and why that has occurred?
Yes, so particularly on page 2, when you start looking at the special education services that we have historically contracted out through CISA 5 with the additional teacher of the visual impaired and orientation mobility that was actually just approved tonight. We were able to bring that resources within our own district, which was able to reduce the cost substantially out of the CISA 5 contract. So that is a reduction from previous years that you'll see from last year to this year.
So we believe that there will be cost savings moving forward with the fact that we're hiring directly.
There's cost savings on the contract alone.
Yes.
We also will be looking at contracting out his services to the
Yes.
extent that we can, and we'll actually make money on it, as well as save money on the original or the CISA contract.
Excellent.
It's a win-win.
Okay, so we have a motion. No, do we have a motion? Yeah, we have a motion and a second on the floor. There's no further discussion. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving into item 12, technology, lease purchase of iPads. And Brian is here tonight to present this information to us.
So in front of you, you have the memo that I sent to the board seeking approval for a 3-year lease of 310 iPads. That's part of a plan we put together in the district to address the issue of our obsolete devices. That's another major reason why we passed a referendum for technology, was to get the funding to create sustainable plans for technology. We like to use leases because that creates, in essence, a line item in our budget, and we know what the cost is to support that each year, rather than just going out and buying devices. So a lease works to distribute the costs, and it also allows us to plan for the future and budget. A little history behind the iPads. They crept in. That was the first mobile device that really became popular in education. And our district embraced that, and they just sort of crept in over the years. There was never a plan to sustain the replacement of iPads. People just kind of assumed they would last forever. They don't. Every iPad 2, 3, 4, and mini is now obsolete. The iOS can't be updated anymore, which is a huge security risk that we don't want to continue. And we can't update and manage them, which is also another factor when you're trying to use them educationally. Teachers need someone to help them manage apps and get all that done, and we can't do that with the current environment. So we came up with this plan. It's a baseline. I would call it modest. It provides a baseline level for each school in terms of number of iPads available to students on a cart, as well as a certain number of iPads that are available to staff that need iPads. I'd also note that this does not address special ed. Special ed actually took on this problem several years ago, well, 2 years ago. They saw it coming, and they used their funding to create a plan for special education. So we work in tandem with them, especially with our assistive technology specialist. Cassie Frost has done a phenomenal job. So they have their plan. This is now the plan for regular education. We'll use the same software and the same support to manage those devices.
So I move to approve the Wells Fargo lease agreement for the purchase of 310 iPads.
Second.
Oh, and to clarify, it's with Wells Fargo because that's who Apple contracts with for their lease agreements. So it's not like we have an option.
So you still have a second to that? All right, Michael, he'll still second that one. Okay, any questions or discussion? All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Brian. Item 13, general, A, referendum projects update.
The projects haven't changed. We will be beginning construction on Plover Whiting, Washington, Phase 1 of Ben Franklin, which is the entryway in the office area tied into security. And of course, SPASH, I'll update you in August how those projects are going, as well as update you on the planning for projects for the 2021, no, summer of 20. Wow.
Yeah.
But that work is just starting in terms of the planning process. We'll be going out to bid actually this fall, so which will be nice to get ahead of the spring competition, which we dealt with this year because of the November referendum. But a lot of work will be starting very, very soon.
The bids have all been, well, the bids are continuing. I mean, I
The
think
bids
they're
are,
all-
will.
the subcontractor stuff is gonna.
Yeah, I
continue to
think we've
flow
got the
through, so.
contracts for the work this summer, and then we'll start approving contracts again in this fall for next summer.
Okay, and then, you wanna speak a little bit about the operating?
The operating referendum, I spent about an hour on earlier. We did now officially use a significant amount of money for, regarding salaries for our teachers' compensation model, as well as special education assistants, and of course, the dental health insurance, excuse me, the dental insurance for teaching assistants. You know, there's, as again, in terms of sustainability, if we just limit to that, there's, you know, approximately $200,000 left that, quite frankly, I'll be very slow to bring forward recommendations. We have staffing that has increased over time. Each year, it seems like our staff gets, you know, larger and larger. Our student body isn't getting larger and larger, so we gotta really take a look at all of our positions and get a better understanding of what everyone's doing. But again, thank you for supporting that tonight. I know it was a significant ask. It was larger than I anticipated, and it happened a little bit quicker than I thought, just based on the data that Beth and her department put together recently. So greatly appreciate your support.
And also based on, and to me, the word crisis just, I mean, for me, it was that, as Craig indicated, we've seen this through the years. We clearly have staff that leave. But this year, I think, again, as that end of the year approached and as other districts actually were literally recruiting our teachers very aggressively as they were beginning to fill out. Craig heard from a lot of people, not only from the individuals who were being recruited, but also from building leadership, from coworkers, from, you know, district-wide, that this really was something that needed to be looked at and fast. And so I appreciate all the time and effort that Beth and Tom and Craig put into getting this in front of us as soon as possible. So this is something that we have now moving forward as we're looking to fill spots going into next year.
I would agree. I would agree. The three of them deserve a lot of credit for putting this together and having to try to figure everything out.
Okay. So meeting dates, times, locations, and future agenda items. We tentatively, right now, we have 3 small items that we know the board has to pass in July. We are hoping that we will be able to just add those to the beginning of the board retreat. All of them are, one is the nursing contract with Portage County. I mean, they're regular things we have to do, but at this point, they don't look like they would involve, you know, a lot of board discussion. And so our hope is that rather than having to call a separate board meeting, that we will be able to handle those at the beginning of the retreat and then have the vast remainder of the retreat for the board retreat. In the event we're able to do that, then we would have that be the board meeting, and then we would not have committee meetings for the month of July. So that's what we were looking at this evening, and we'll keep you apprised of that
We do
moving
have a
forward.
board meeting now on the 8th, right?
8th.
No, July 8th, we would cancel that.
We have the workshop on the
And
9th.
we would have the
Well,
board
I
retreat
am
on the
very,
9th.
very happy to hear that because that's my birthday. and
All
I'm
right, there we go.
very-
All right, so yes, so right now the plan is that we will cancel the 8th and we will
Just
be
add
able
those
to do
on.
the few business items on the 9th at the retreat. All right, so again, the board summer retreat is set for July 9th, 5:30 PM at Boston School Forest. And this year, we're actually going to be having Cabinet join us, and I believe all of the Cabinet is going to join us. So they will be informing us of their, July 9th. They will be informing us of their kind of work in progress, looking towards next year, and then we'll be working with Craig to set his goals, and then we as a board will be looking to set our goals for the next school year. So moving into item 14, I need a number of motions. I need a motion for closed session 19, to go into closed session under 1985 paren 1 paren C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically to consider administrative contracts. Closed section 1985 paren 1 paren E, deliberating or negotiating of the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, specifically to consider compensation for all non-represented staff, including administrators, and closed session 1985, under 1985 paren 1 paren E, deliberating or negotiating of the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, specifically to consider compensation for teachers in hard-to-fill position in negotiations with individual employee compensation requests.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? All right, would you call the roll, Heidi?
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Wade?
Yes.
Mr. Ebo?
Yes.
Ms. Fang?
Yes.
Ms. Portson?
Yes.
Ms. Rano's excused. Ms. Daly?
No.
Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Erler?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I gotta save that for my last meeting.